Oh, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another pre-season edition of the CrowCast Tuesday Night Live, of course, brought to you by everyone who's ever supported us, basically, at the moment. Where's the sign that says this space available? So if there's anyone around that wants to chuck us a sponsorship, that'd be great. But we do appreciate all our past sponsors, Smith Partners Real Estate, of course, Tim's Hardware and Boxed, and in the past we've had Harvest down on the Flurio there, the Strawberry Farm, and someone else that I can't remember, but as soon as I do, I'll check them up. And of course, all our patrons on Patreon. If you want to get around us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/AFLCrowcast and have a crack at that. I heard Macca, what are you doing here, mate?
Well, you invited me, mate, because you were sure.
What the hell was I thinking? What was I thinking?
No, you needed somebody to bring some decorum and PC to the place, mate. So I'm here.
Yes, we...
I was about to say, so why is Macca here then?
Yeah. Pete had to bail at the last minute. He had something unavoidable that he had to attend to, so we say good day to him. But Macca's been good enough to join us off the bench, freshened up after a spell, I would have thought, Mac, and ready to go.
Fighting fit, mate. Absolutely.
Fighting fit.
Yep.
And, of course, Nikki joining us all through the pre-season for her inimitable take on AFLW. Inimitable, Nikki. That's a bit to live up to.
You really had to think of something to say there, didn't you?
Yeah, well,
that pause was a little scary.
Unmatched, I don't know. Unique, long-winded, who knows?
I'll just sit here and giggle.
Yeah, I know. Look,
hey, Nikki, you should. They were the compliments.
Yeah, I know.
Well, you know. Look, anyway, it's great to have everyone on Spreaker joining us. Of course, you can listen to us on Spreaker or Facebook, and through the pre-season on demand on YouTube. We'll get that live stream going on YouTube once the season proper starts. But in the meantime, let's have a listen, or let's have a talk about what's been going on in the AFL. Not a hell of a lot going on, although there was a bit going on, Nikki, a bit going on earlier this week about something with the AFL, and I can't quite, now that I've...
Something.
Well,
we're so on top of it, aren't we? We're just kind of like, yeah.
You're talking about the AFL general or the Crows, because it's been a bit happening with the Crows.
Well, let's talk about the AFL first, shall we?
Well, we're talking about the AFL. Well, Melbourne, who want to rise from the dead, they've got Gorm, who's got a bit of a knee injury, who may or may not be ready for the first one, but he's understudy in Preseason. He's done his cartilage and torn his cartilage, and he's going to miss about 8 games. Yeah. So from Melbourne's point of view, and they've got a couple of other injuries too, so they may not rise from the dead as much as they'd like, really. So in terms of Essendon, they've got O'Connor, the speedy Irishman. He's gone back homesick for a little while. He may or may not be back in time to play games. He's really missing his home. Yeah, back it on. And talking about the Irish, that red-headed bull I was hoping was going to stay with us is built like a brick shithouse. I mean, he would have been great to keep, but he's gone homesick and gone back to Ireland.
No, he wasn't homesick. He got a very nice, brand spanking new job waiting for him once he got back in Ireland.
Oh, they bribed him back, did they, Nikki?
Oh, yes, they did. They've given him a very good job with Keystone, and they're already spruiking it. And I think that's what they had to do. And I think quite a few strings were being pulled back in Ireland to keep him there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because by the sounds of it and what we talked about last week, our feeling was that we've probably got him lined up, but we knew that Ireland itself were exceedingly pissed, and there's their reaction. They had to do something like that because they can't pay him because it's an amateur sport. No.
Fair enough. And talking about Essendon, Joe Danaher, who, I mean, that what's his name, that guy, El Dorado, whatever his bloody name is for Essendon. I never can remember his name.
What are you talking about?
Their footy manager. I can't remember.
Oh, Dodoro.
That's it. That was bloody close, wasn't I? He always thinks he's so clever. He wants to screw the living daylights out of people. They had a broken down croc in Joe Dano. No, well, you know what I mean. And they got a broken down croc in Joe Dano, and they got offered at one stage. I think they were offered 2 first rounders or at least 1 first rounder for him. And, he kept saying he wanted Papley or some other youngster plus pick 5 plus pick 10. Of course, Joe Dana's he's broken down again, and he's unlikely to play very much footy, if at all, this year.
Yeah.
So Sydney have dodged a bullet on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
And a couple other things which Vardy Magic was very kind to raise in the chat there. The half-time break remains the same in spite of all that bullshit that they floated out there to see what the reaction was about it being shorter.
Yep.
And, seriously, if they made it any shorter, people go there to buy one of their gold-plated pies and beer that costs about $1,000 for a glass. And in 20 minutes, you need every bit of that to do it. And if they'd cut another 5 minutes or so off of that, well, people just wouldn't be able to do it.
It actually has nothing to do with the people. The fans complained about it. The AFL were all set to change it. The only reason they haven't changed it is because Channel 7 has said, no, we need that time for advertising. It's purely and simply why it hasn't changed, because Channel 7 said no.
And the other point, which I think is a contentious one, Nikki, and you and I may disagree on this, and I hope we do. The AFL, the AFLW wanted to push, or somebody in the AFLW is pushing the case to try and make the AFL change its name to AFLM. And I would hope that never, ever happens, because I've got news for you. Nikki, I've got news for AFL.
No, it means they might finally drop the V from there.
Nikki, just be quiet for a minute.
Wow.
It's
on already.
How precious people have gotten over this. It's hilarious.
I've got news for AFLW. They did not invent the AFL. The AFL invented them.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute.
The AFL did not invent football. The AFL stands for Australian Football League.
Nikki,
not the game of Australian rules football.
Nikki,
I have hated the fact that it's now Victoria AFL. It's Canberra AFL. They've gone and branded the actual game of Australian rules football as the AFL, the Australian Football League. They've got their grubby little hands into that respect. So if they're going to go down that path, which is what they've done, they have the AFL Women's, so the other competition is the AFL Men's.
No, it bloody well not. Now, you should be quiet, because I've got one sentence there and you've got about 20 out there. It's the AFL, and they created another competition called the AFLW. So they have the bloody right to say what it's called, not the AFLW trying to make them change their name. It
wasn't the AFL Women's to do it. It was just something that was put out on Twitter as and because they also knew what the reaction was going to be, because there's been a lot of once again, negative issues that on the AFL Facebook page, where they've done cross promotions with the AFL Women's, and they have got a lot of trolls coming in and talking about how shit it is. And it was partly to highlight how precious some people feel when they think their lovely little masculinity is being threatened. It was
Nikki,
hilarious.
Don't worry about it.
Hilarious.
So is the fact that the AFLW want the AFL to change their name. God's sake.
All right, enough of that. It's a moot point anyway, because they've canned it. For what it's worth, I think it's silly. But
I know.
No, Nikki, I rang the bell.
Yeah.
That's enough. Just before we move on to the AFL, the other thing I think worth probably talking about for a second is Jesse Hagen over in Fremantle, away again for quote unquote mental health issues. I don't think he'll play for Freo again.
He's a very interesting case, isn't he? And I think there's no doubt that he was having those problems when he was with Melbourne.
Yep.
Melbourne did not inform Freo about that, and they unloaded him onto for a very good draft pick. So good trading by Melbourne, but in terms of ethics, maybe not. I'm not sure what you think about that. With you, if you've got a player with a problem like that, do you think they should disclose it?
I do think that Freo were fairly aware, but they thought him being back home, which is what a lot of the problems for him would help that, because it was his father being unwell, just that distance from the family was causing a few issues, and him going home was hopefully something that was going to help rectify it.
Yeah.
But it's obviously a lot deeper than that, and he needs to just get out of the football environment for a while for his own well-being.
Yeah.
The theme may well be right. He may never come back.
Yeah, I think Freo might actually cut him loose. I think they might work out a deal where they give him some support, but I think they might cut their losses on Jesse Hagen. I just don't think his heart's in it, to be honest.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, the last thing, just before we move off it, Kane Corns during the week.
Oh yes, good old
came out top five worst trades in the AFL, and he slotted in Bryce Gibbs at number 5. Now, I'm aware that Bryce had a fairly lean season last year, but the bloke didn't do too badly for us when he came over to begin with. Is he really the 5th worst trade of all time?
No, of course he's not. I mean, the greatest one of all time is the Downs-Chalmers trade. My God.
Well, I don't know. Chris Groom for Andrew McLeod worked
Chris
out
Groom
quite
for
nice.
Andrew McLeod. I think he might have put.
Would win it.
He might have put a time frame around it. I can't remember, but the Chris Groom for Macca wins hands down every day of the week.
Although I will actually stick up for Chris Groom, because at that time he was a very highly rated key position player.
Yeah,
he got a hell of a lot of injuries.
Yeah, he did.
He got quite a serious one.
Look, I don't think Chris Groom would have been a bad player for Freo. And you're right, Nick. He did get struck down a bit by injuries and his career got cut short. But Bryce, number 5, come on, Kane. Jesus. Anyway.
Well, Kane, but remember last scene, Kane's already in the headlines too, because he accused Cozzy, the guy on Channel 9, of stealing some of Lucy's marvellous material that she'd written.
Yeah.
And they called him as a thief and all those types of things.
Yeah.
Turns out that they'd actually done it on behalf of another company who gave permission to Cozzy to use it. And and their way of apology was almost as abusive as what they said in the first place. They're vicious.
Yeah, well, we want to be careful about what we say about Lucy and Kane Corns in terms of personal views. We're all entitled to them, but suffice to say that neither of their opinions have any weight on this show.
Correct.
Someone whose opinion does carry a lot of weight on this show, Macca, is Angela Pippos, and we've been playing a bit of our fantastic conversation with Angela from last year so far over the pre-season, and leading into our chat about the first round of AFLW on the weekend. Let's have a listen to Angela again on growing support of the AFLW.
53,000 people at Adelaide.
Oh, that was incredible.
Wasn't that incredible? And that was such a powerful and emotional experience for me, because it was a real up yours to all of the doubters.
Yep.
It has arrived, and there is an appetite for it. And if it's promoted properly and supported and, and given the right coverage, it will grow. Because it always annoys me that, there's this... We don't give women and girls in sport the time and the luxury that we give boys and men. I mean, even in the media, a woman who wants to carve out a career as a commentator, I'm thinking of Kelly Underwood. I mean, she started her career at Channel 10, and they get a few complaints and they get nervous, and then she's taken off air, and these male commentators are given time to develop their craft and to grow into the role. It feels like for women, if you're not a success in the first 3.5 minutes, that's it. You're out of there. So we need to treat them the way that we treat men, and that's the same with a brand new competition. Back in the old days when men first started playing, professionally, they weren't kicking massive scores. So I just think we need to give women time to grow into this new role, whether it's on or off the field.
If only Brian Taylor was a female, we wouldn't have had to endure about 20 years worth of commentary. He would have already been gone.
Don't be on Brian.
The thing of it is, though, Angela, with that 53,000, that takes men and women to embrace the sport, and I think that's been the biggest thing. It's not just women following women; it's males and females following a version of the sport, and I think that's the thing that probably has surprised the AFL the most. The fact that it's been embraced by all, both genders, all genders. It's not just female specific.
Absolutely, and another example of that was the reaction to the Taylor Harris photograph.
Yep.
There were as many men as women condemning the trolls and those hideous comments. It felt like, for me, it was a real turning point where men and women came together. We were united to say we support Taylor Harris, we support women in football, and more broadly, we support women.
And that was another little snippet from our conversation with Angela. Good points as always there. And Mac, I know that you've been a bit on the fence with AFLW, but you'd have to agree that the vitriol that's been occurring again at the beginning of this AFLW season has been pretty vile and unwarranted.
No, totally. I'm not on the fence with AFLW. I'm just more AFL original, for another word, orientated. But I do watch the AFLW games, and I do form an opinion on it. And I think quite right that the vitriol is totally unjustified. And look, the standard is not what it should be, and it's not what it's going to be. It's going to be grow into something that'll be a lot better than what it is now. Because
hang on a minute, what do you mean the standard isn't what it should be? What should it be?
So, well, put it this way. The trolls would have nothing to say if they were trying to do this in about 10 years' time, because by then we'll have young girls that have done nothing but play footy all through their junior years, and by the time they get up to play AFLW, they'll be damn good footballers who have beautiful disposal skills, evasive skills, etc., etc. At the moment, I would say the standard of the AFLW is not as high as a lot of people would hope, and but it has been weakened this year again by the fact that by bringing in all the new teams into it, it's actually, I think there are some players playing this year that probably wouldn't have got a game last year. But having said that, I watched the Adelaide game, and I would support it as much as anybody else. I was disappointed with the result, but I'm also realistic enough to realise that the number of players they had out was tremendous. When you replace players,
carry on. We're on the clock here, mate. You bloody waffle! Has Mrs. Macker not let you talk all off season? Have you been mute?
Well, geez,
I mean, I wouldn't blame her. I'll ask for an opinion, but not a.
He's giving you a recap as well as an opinion.
What I'm trying to tell you is that I'm not anti it.
Yeah, but just on that first kind of point you made, the problem is that we had some of those lower leagues going on already before there was an AFLW, but because there is now some at this higher level, it's increased the participation rate. We're getting better coaching in. I mean, personally, my own team, the coach we have for our team, for a women's team, is also a development coach at the SANFL. So we're getting some high quality coaching going on there, and we've seen skills improve dramatically just from having those better coaches around. But you wouldn't have that unless there was the SANFL little league that happens alongside the AFLW. So yes, it is going to take those extra 10 years or so to fully get through, but I do think we've already starting to see some of these players coming through that have been able to play all the way through now. They're not missing out. They hadn't had to stop at 13 or 14 like Erin had. If anybody saw the Fremantle game on the weekend, Roxy Rue, I mean, that girl could actually kick it 50 metres easily. She's a massive talent.
There are some real talents there. I'm not arguing about that. What I'm saying is, at the moment, it's not to the level it's going to be, and for the very reasons you just said yourself, then, Nikki.
Well, I think that's better. I think that's better wording, Mac. I mean, Angela made a point during that little snippet. You know, you go have a look at the scores in men's football at the beginning of the competition back in the early 1900s. There weren't many cricket scores kicked in the first 5 or 10 years of the competition in the male side either. So, you know, and they played longer quarters and had more people on the ground and all sorts of bloody things. So, anyway, I don't want to labour the point, but it'll be nice when we can say about the AFLW that the science is in and we don't have to talk about the validity of the competition anymore, and we can just go ahead and do what we're going to do now, which is talk about the game. And Adelaide, I couldn't understand the commentators saying that it was a massive upset because we had 93 players out.
Exactly.
I mean,
and we only had one player on the field who actually knew how to play football.
It's unbelievable.
Remembered how to play football. The rest of them seem to have forgotten. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the end, Brisbane 5-4-34 to Adelaide 3-3-21 in testing conditions. Brisbane got off to a bit of a flyer, and unfortunately we weren't able to capitalise in the second quarter with the breeze, and we were playing catch up for the rest of the game. But look, my personal view is I felt like we lacked a bit of class. Our ball movement, even though the pattern of ball movement was good, I marvel sometimes at our girls' ability to switch play. But we just lacked a little bit of class in that transition, and we didn't really have a target up forward.
Well, that last point is the one that I was going to raise. I think it's one of the real key ones, that we didn't have that big body up there to contest at least, to actually put some real pressure on them, and also maybe take a mark or maybe get the ball to the ground. And that was proved when they swung, what's her name, Nikki? You know who? Down Alan. And see, Nikki is useful. And
I'm struggling to think whether you are, but keep going.
And they swung Alan down there, and she got herself a goal. I mean, actually, it wasn't even from a mark; it was just good play on her behalf because she's a damn good player. And it just showed all the players that we had out. And when you have players out, invariably it's usually your good ones that are injured, and have your top up players come in there. And how many do we have making their debut? 8 or 9 players.
8 or 9,
I think it was.
Yeah. And they made a good account of themselves too. Young Martin, what's her first name, Nick? I've forgotten.
Rochelle.
Yeah, she was fantastic. I felt like she was almost our best player at halftime. She a really good account of herself. A couple of the others looked a little light in terms of body size, and took a little while to I guess get the pace of the game. And I felt like our skills in general were down. We fumbled a lot, and weather notwithstanding, I felt like Brisbane were cleaner with the ball, and they just had more targets. But let's just spend a minute talking about Anne Hatchard, shall we?
Oh, outstanding!
I love her.
Well, what I like about Hatchard is that she's got very good anticipation where the ball's going to. She sees ball, she gets ball, and she's not frightened of any physicality. She's a great tackler as well, and in general, she's a very good disposer of the ball. I thought she had just about had the complete game on.
Oh, she had a blinder, absolute blinder.
It was a beauty.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but which head coach didn't give her best on ground? Because one of them only gave her the 4 votes instead of the 5.
Unbelievable.
No,
AFL record disposal. Not only did she have AFL record possessions, but the amount of effective possessions, the ratio of effective possessions was so high. I think the big challenge while we're dealing with the outs that we've got, particularly Erin and those prime movers, is how to use Hatchard, because it seemed like in the end Anne was just basically given license to go wherever was needed, and she's going to burn out if that's the case. We need to give her a role, and kind of stick to it.
Yeah, they put a heavy tag on her in the second half, and it didn't work because she's such strong through the body as well, just like you said, Macca. But she's a backup ruck. She's an inside midfielder. She's an outside midfielder. She's got a great set of hands in terms of marking. She does sometimes still drop ones she shouldn't. There's just that little lapse in concentration which happens every so often, but she's got, I think somebody in the chat actually said, she knows where to run to the right spot. So she's very all-rounded as a midfielder, which makes her very hard to match up on and try and tag her. I think we did, although interesting, her possessions kind of finished when there was still about 8 minutes to go on the clock, and she didn't get any other possessions after that. So I think she then went to the bench for a bit of a rest and came back on after that. So she could have actually got more disposals if we'd left her out on the field, which is insane. But she's got a really great penetrating kick. She always kicks to the advantage of whoever we're passing to. So on the downside of that, the reverse one, where we had the problem in our forward line is Eloise Jones. She never likes to start in front of her opponent. She always starts behind. She gives her defender the front position and she doesn't react quick enough. So we were getting some good movement coming through that midfield, going to kick it up forward, and they were chopping it off because she was waiting for the ball to come out the back. And this is a problem with Eloise. I really like her as a player, and I think she can absolutely dominate because she's got some very good tricks. Until she learns how to actually get in front and read the play better than her opponent, it's going to be a problem.
Actually, I hate to say this, Nikki, but you're 100% spot on about that because she was constantly behind her opponent, and she's actually, when she's in front, she's got a lovely pair of hands overhead, but they didn't come into play because she was always trying to do it from behind. A couple of times she tried to come from the side, but look, she I don't know whether she's not timing her lead or not reading it well or whatever, but I thought she had an absolute shitter, actually.
She tends to react a little late, and that's something I've noticed ever since she started playing. And I was hoping that it had finally started to click this year. I mean, to be fair, that wet weather didn't help at all. And she was one of those who was quite fumbly in the wet. And I would very much... I was just yelling at the television. I had my coach in my head. It's wet weather football. You need to be hard and run through the ball. We were reaching.
Yeah, very much.
Running past.
Very much so, Nikki. We were reaching.
Wet weather.
Yep.
Brisbane were playing wet weather.
Yeah. One person that should have benefited from the weather, I felt, and was quiet was Ed Marinoff.
Oh, not totally quiet. I thought she played a useful game, but probably not right up to her very top games. But they were tagging her too. Yeah,
she's got to be better than that. She's particularly with Chelsea and Erin and those players out of the team. Ebony is she's a foundation player. She's a good player. She held the possession record herself. And in those sort of conditions, her style of play, she needed to get around it a lot more. I would have expected her to be involved in the play a lot more. And I just felt like she was off the boil, a little bit hesitant. Whether she had a job to do, whether she was struggling with the tag, I'm not quite sure. But I think the weight of Hatchard's possession showed that she needed an offsider. And I felt like we could have got more from Marinoff.
Well, I can't argue with that because of the fact it wasn't one of her great games, but...
you can't argue with it because it's my show, but anyway.
I love democracy.
Oh, Macca, look,
marvellous.
Do you know what? I have missed you so much. I feel all this pent up, I don't know what. It's something's pent up and it's all just flowing out. So we'll just lay off.
I hope it's not bloody lust, mate. I hope it's not lust.
No, well, maybe a little bit.
Jesus, don't say that. I'm as straight as they come.
But I'll lay off, mate. Keep going.
I just want to kind of say that for those who watch the game, I love actually what Clarkey at the first quarter time break, just watching him look at the girls and throw his hands up in the air and just go like really as if to say to what was that shit?
Yeah, that was shocking that first quarter.
Yeah, he just did that at him. But you can see, but what I find so interesting is you watch them, they're all staring at him. There's no little talking going on in the background or whatever. When he's in front of them, they pay attention. And then the contrast, that fourth quarter, he's looked at the scoreboard, what's happening, the way they're playing. Okay, let's throw it around. Let's see what we can do.
The interesting thing, though, Nikki, was the fact that in spite of everything we said, how bad they went and how this player didn't perform and that player didn't perform, from quarter time onwards, we actually outscored them by 1 point. So
it was that first quarter that killed it. It really was. I felt like Clarkey got a bit of stage fright when he was mic'd up at, when was it, half-time or three-quarter time? It was probably the least inspiring.
Yeah, it was three-quarter time.
Three-quarter time speech I've ever heard.
That's the way it is. I've been to training and I've seen the way he talks to the girls. That's pretty much close to it. It's always fairly calm, but they listen with absolute rapt attention. Yeah. So he doesn't have to raise his voice. He doesn't have to do any of the other things that you see other coaches do.
The one player I feel like we are missing that hasn't really been spoken a hell of a lot about is Van Hagen. I think we really missed her height. And yes, exactly. That ability to present was really lacking. We broke down at half forward so often, and we didn't really get a lot of deep entries. And I feel like Denny being out of the team really hurt us.
But also what she does is that linking that she does actually starts in the back line. She is the wing that we play that drops as an extra into defence. She's always the outlet player from defence that gets it out and then does the follow through. She's such a hard running winger, and you're right. She's got that really nice height, all those lovely skills to go with it. I think she's probably one of the best wingers in the comp.
Do we have any timeline on her coming back in?
Couple of weeks.
Yeah, we will be better for her. It should be underdone, but we will be better for her inclusion. Now, we do need to move on. Of course, next week. Can
I just have a little recap on a couple of other things?
A real quick one.
Yeah, just great that over there was just under 43,000 people attended all over. I loved seeing Moorabbin with the thin goalposts and the painted at the top and everything else, and it being a lockout was great. I do think a lot of the expansion clubs will struggle. I love the fact that Richmond got their asses kicked after everybody raved about how great they were.
I'll tell you what was best about that game, Nikki, because I actually watched it, was Bet Goddard just going the absolute thump for the whole game about why the reigning premiers didn't get the opening game at their home ground, why we were forced to go to Brisbane for our first game.
I was going to raise that point.
It was amazing.
Yep, and Nicole Livingston had no answers to it. Her whole thing was, we're trying to create traditions.
Of course, yeah.
Hey, Livingston, sit down, shut up. You don't create traditions, they happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, just translated as bullshit.
Yeah. Anyway, look, we do need to move on. Next week, of course, we've got St Kilda at home on Sunday afternoon at 4:40. You would expect, obviously, with St Kilda being less than impressive against Western Bulldogs, that we would be a fair chance to win that.
And lost their key player.
No. They did. Their boss. Yeah, there were 3 knee injuries on the Sunday, which is a bugger. With Van Berto, I can't say it. Nelly Van Berto from here.
Yeah.
She unfortunately did her knee. They are actually a fast running side, and it's sides like that do give us trouble. So we're going to have to really try and cut them out. They're a side that really enjoys physicality.
Well, that won't worry us.
but you try and give it to them. They're not going to take a step backwards like some of the others teams we did kind of see a little bit over the weekend. I really enjoyed watching them play. They're going to click one day, but
not next Sunday.
They will trouble some teams.
Not next Sunday, Nick. I think it'll be an indicator of whether we're going to be able to ride out the injury toll. I think if we struggle against the Saints, we're going to struggle for the season.
Yeah.
So, look, that's it for the AFLW, and we look forward to seeing the Crows bounce back on Sunday afternoon. Now, just before we do go, we obviously need to talk a little bit about the AFLM. So let's crack into that, shall we?
God's sake.
So we're going to start talking about the squad over the pre-season, and I ran a bit of a Twitter poll about who people are looking forward to in terms of rookies, and it was fairly split actually, which indicates to me that not only do we have a lot of untried players, but there's a lot to look forward to. We've had people looking forward to Frampton and Ned, of course, and Will Hamill and a few others, and even people have mentioned Nixie as the new coach to see what he brings to the table. But it really indicates to me that we've got a lot of untried talent that we're going to see this year, and hopefully a lot to look forward to as the season unfolds.
Yeah, one of the names you didn't mention there was Chase Jones, of course, because I'm expecting him to have a breakout season this year. He'll get the opportunities, he'll get chances in the guts, and I think he'll go very well. The other one is Mackesy too. He's a bit of a chance, I think, to even play in the opening games with Hagen down.
Yeah, Luke Brown was talking him up in his presser today.
Yeah, and speaking of Brownie, we got a new contract out of him too, which is great news.
Yeah, our first ever interview was actually with Luke.
It was too, you're right. So good to see him signing on again.
Yeah, he's a very, very good club man, a good team man, and look, he loves to take on their best forward and their best small forward and lock them down, and I reckon he will. And when I say he will, I'm thinking of Eddie Betts there. That'll be a real good one. But apparently, he used to give Eddie Betts a hiding out at bloody trading.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think we've mentioned it before. His nickname amongst the boys is Silence, because that's generally what he does to the best small forwards in the AFL. Is he silences them? Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, before him, we had Miller signing on for 5 years.
And the reaction video when he told the boys, and I thought it was quite pointed when he made the comment of, hope to see some more signing on. And the camera was on Brad Crouch and then it came away. It was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that will be the big one, of course, because I don't think there'll be any of the other boys that we want to keep that won't sign on.
Well, the interesting one was the one raised during the week, and one thing we didn't mention in AFL News was the big push to get Tassie involved by 2025, and it seems now that with Hawthorn and North Melbourne sort of waning in interest, and the Tassie government really ramping up their support for an AFL team in Tasmania by 2025, it could get up, and of course, our number one pick of a couple of years ago was none other than a Tassie pin-up boys. So here we go again.
Yeah.
And they might finally steal Hamish from us for recruiting.
Well, that's right. So, watch that space. But look, for mine, I think my biggest interest is in the forward line. I'm fascinated to see how we're going to line up post-Jenkins.
That's where all the question marks are, I think. That's the area.
Yes, absolutely. And with Tex a year older and without the captaincy, so that weight is certainly been lifted off Tex. I'm really interested to see whether Himmelberg can step up, whether Frampton can get games, whether Ben Davis can get games, how we use Tommy Lynch, how we use our small forwards with Stengel and co. whether Ned McHenry becomes a small forward or whether they use him in defence. There's lots of questions.
I want to use him on the wing.
Lots of questions with regards to our forward line.
Even Crocker. I reckon even Crocker might be a handy forward.
Well, I reckon he might
you've got
be a
Crocker
sniff,
and Keys.
Well, Keys is on baller.
No, he's also a forward pocket. He's also a forward player. So he does that kind of link play. He was playing a lot in the Queensland League last year up forward as well. And they are both incredibly fit. They're already pushing apparently a lot of other players on the track, which is great. That's why you want them in the team. And they're only 22, so they're still quite young. I thought it was interesting. There was an interview with Nix, and when they were asking him about the younger players, he mentioned Ben Davis. We've got to get him in the team and give him a solid number of games and put him in a position to let him shine.
Yeah.
So it could be on the wing.
I don't think it'll be on the wing, to be honest. I think he's got a forward spot. I think he's going to be third tall. I reckon we might play Lynch higher. But it's a big year for Benny Davis. He's been in the system now long enough. Yes, he hasn't been given opportunities for reasons that probably don't relate to form for him. Bloody hell, what was that?
Sorry, that's me stifling a cough. I've got to give you the whole one if you wanted it.
Oh, Jesus.
No, thank you.
Live podcasting, folks.
I love it.
Jesus.
You just wait for Sundays this year.
Yeah. Benny Davis, a big year for Ben, and I hope that he takes opportunities.
A no from me.
Well, based on what? Based on what, Matt? You've seen him for one game at Cardinia Park, for God's sakes.
I did see him, and I thought he didn't show anything whatsoever, and I accept that was a difficult situation. But this could have been his year, but there's a lot of new stuff come in and new players come in. His competition has increased drastically for the position.
But who's he in contact? Who's he in contest with?
Well,
it's not Frampton. Frampton's the only other.
No, Crocker and Chase Jones will be resting up forward. McHenry.
McHenry and do you actually know how Ben plays? Have you seen him play, Matt?
Seen him play in the sample many times.
Yeah, comparing him with McHenry is stupid. I mean, it's with all due respect.
What I'm just saying is, you can only get a certain number into the forward line, and it depends on their structure. And it may well be because of the different players that have come, we'll end up with a different structure, which may not leave the spot for him. That was the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair enough point. But I reckon he's going to get first crack, and I reckon that Nix is a bit bullish on him, and he's a X factor player that we probably lack. And all it needs is for him to get a run of games, I believe. And be played in a position that's suitable for him, and I think he'll give it a real crack. And I'm certainly not as negative about Benny Davis as you are, Macca, and I respect your opinion, but the evidence so far has been so slim that game against Geelong, he was just set up to fail. I don't know what the selectors were thinking last year, not only in picking him for that one game, but then dropping him straight after.
Yeah, that was crazy.
The dropping him was ridiculous. And for me, because Lynch still wasn't ready. Lynch still hadn't come back.
Yeah, that's
and we dropped him. It was a ridiculous thing. But that Geelong game, he was getting his hands to the ball, but he wasn't quite clunking him. And that's that step up from SNFL to AFL. He was showing he was getting to the right spots. He was just not quite getting it. And that's why I was looking forward to him getting a secondary game. And then it didn't happen.
I think the interesting one is going to be how we use Darcy. Because, when you talk about players playing for spots, Darcy and Tex are almost the same player, if you ask me. And we're going to have to we have to use Darcy, which begs the question: are we going to play him in a Tex-like role, or are we going to play him high? A lot will depend on whether we want to go small or tall in the forward line, because I think.
Correct.
Fogarty will be in competition with, Frampton, Himmelberg, those types for that centre half forward spot.
Well, I actually see more and more whether Frampton plays. I think his situation is related to whether he's out of here in Himmelberg, who's seen out to be the relief ruckman, and resting in the forward line. That's what I would have thought, anyhow.
Well, that's a good point.
And it's training. They've Frampton's been doing more ruck work than Himmelberg. Himmelberg comes and joins them at the end, but Frampton's been doing consistently a lot more ruck work than he has at training.
And I think that might be a bit of a hint.
Well, the thing with Himmelberg is that he's got to start clunking marks. His hands really went hard after a promising start.
They're straight up by his ears. They need to be forward.
Yeah, I know his techniques. All I'm saying is he ended up dropping a lot of. He dropped a lot of ball that he needed to take. So I would still put him in front of Frampton. To be honest with you, even ruck work, I think I put him in front of Frampton. But he certainly has got Frampton breathing down his neck. And you make a good point, Macca. We've got to have that backup ruck, which makes it even harder to understand exactly how we're going to structure up forward with Tex, Fogg, Davis, and Lynch, and a few smalls to throw in there. So it's going to be fascinating. We're sort of like 10 days away from the first pre-season game. What is it? Saturday week, I think, the 22nd. So it's going to be fascinating to see how they structure up.
Yeah, there are a lot of permutations, and depend whether they play a small forward line, a tall forward line, and as you say, who's the relief ruck. And at this stage, I think we'll get a better idea once they start playing the two pre-season games. But until then, I think we're just guessing in the dark.
Yeah. Now we are running out of time.
I'll just say one other thing on Fogarty is there's also the option to put him in the midfield.
Yeah, Foggs is versatile, and I think that's why he'll be in the...
Jury's out on midfield. Anyway, look, I want to finish off. Champion Data put out their rankings for the season, some contentious ones. But I just want your thoughts on each of the rankings that they've put in for Adelaide. Defence, they've put us in at number 8. Do you think that's warranted to be that high?
Yeah, I do. I think we've got a very good defence, and I think that probably, if anything, we could have been a couple of spots higher.
Yeah, our defence is good, but then again, the way the game is played, your defence relies on your midfield.
Yeah,
if you're just looking pure skills and the way they actually work as a defensive team, then that's actually probably our best team on the field.
I think it's a bit speculative. You've got Hagen struggling. You've got Talia, who had some very good and very bad games last year, and seems to be, half the time struggling with his body. You got Tom coming back from a knee. Lairdy had a year that he'd probably like to forget last year.
A good year.
I think the ranking is, as much as I think our defence is our best zone, I think the ranking is a bit speculative, and we do need a few things to go right to maintain a solid defence. I feel like in the key position tall area, we're not far from falling off a cliff. And the young lad Geordie Butts, I hope he steps up and makes a play.
We've got Butts, Worrell, Mackesy.
I'm a real big G for him. I think he may well play this year.
Well, he may have to, Mac. Anyway, moving on the forwards, not surprisingly, I think that we're 16th and not 18th. That's my view. Because
it's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, because we went from being a very high-scoring team in 2017 to everything drying up in 2018. You could argue some of that was personnel and some of that was structure, but we were Scheisenhausen up forward. So any case to be made for us being any higher than 16th?
No.
I didn't think so. Nick?
Nope.
No. Mids, we're actually one off the bottom, and I find it hard to believe that Carlton are ranked 18th in the mids. To be honest, I don't think their midfield is terrible.
I thought the whole mids was bullshit. absolute bullshit. The mids.
Yeah. North Melbourne ranked
mean,
number 2 in midfield. I just can't see it. Collingwood,
I'm
by
sorry,
the
what?
length of
North
the
Melbourne
straight,
where?
second ratings in the midfield. Now, don't forget this is a stats company, so this is based on stats. It's not an
Owned by the
opinion-based
AFL.
thing. Yeah, no, but it's true data. It's not opinion-based.
But the way they collate the data, though, there is a little bit of opinion in how they actually collect that data.
Well, possibly,
And
but
the-
in any case, that's another
I had issues
podcast.
with their
So
data.
If I said to you, would you take GWS as midfield or North Melbourne's? Nobody's going to say North
no,
Melbourne.
and GWS is down at 12th. So
it's farcical.
Yeah.
It's farcical.
But nevertheless, I think Adelaide at 17th. I probably think it's a little bit harsh. I would have put
We're in
us
the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, for me, I probably would have said 14th to 12th.
Oh, that's harsh. I still think our midfield.
No, because it is getting a little bit older, and it depends on what happens with McHenry, Jones, etc. going in there for extended periods. But if you're sticking with Sloane, Crouch and Crouch, that's slow.
Yeah. Well, look, I think our midfield stocks, and we'll talk more about these zones in the weeks to come, but a lot depends on Bradley Crouch this year, in my opinion. Notwithstanding the young blokes coming through, Brad's got to step up. I would have put us probably same with you, Nick, 12 to 14. I think we've got some solid players in the midfield. We don't have a standout at the moment. Hopefully one emerges over the next 12 months. But I certainly wouldn't have us down at 17. I think that's ridiculous.
No, I'm optimistic that with they're putting some pace into the midfield. And, previously we've always had four bodies into the same. They see ball, get ball, nobody's on the outside, and they take the ball away. This time, we're going to structure up differently. Our structure's been shocking, and I think we've got good ball getters in the three that we mentioned, and you put on the outside blokes like Chase, Jones, and Miller, etc. We've got pace, and I think we've become a reasonable midfield.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And look, on that positive note, I think we're going to call it a night. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the Spreaker chat. Thanks to Mark and others who are listening on Facebook. We will upload the audio to, maybe the video actually, to YouTube later on. Don't forget you can listen to us on demand anytime by clicking on the link on our website, aflcrowcast.com. Thanks to all our supporters. Thank you, Macca, for stepping in.
I enjoyed it. Loved it. It's good fun.
And Nikki, thanks as always for your inimitable, that's twice I've used that word now, inimitable insight into the AFLW. We will be back again next Tuesday night with more AFLW coverage and also a closer look at the AFL Adelaide squad. Bruce has told me to get off. See you later.
Catch you later.